The neighborhood had always carried an air of quiet perfection. Every house looked almost identical: pale siding, trimmed hedges, identical mailboxes lined like soldiers. Lawns were mowed at the same height, driveways swept clean, and the only sounds on weekends were the soft buzz of sprinklers or the faint hum of leaf blowers. It was a community that prided itself on order, where anything that strayed too far from the unspoken code of uniformity felt like a disruption. In that world of neat repetition stood one house that carried a bit more life and more laughter. Its backyard was often filled with the faint aroma of charcoal, the sizzling crackle of grilling meat, and the sounds of family gatherings that drifted past the fence with the easy rhythm of summer weekends. To most, it was the sound of life, warmth, and joy. But to one neighbor, it was nothing short of an offense. She lived 3 houses down, sharp, severe, and always watching. The kind of neighbor who noticed if your garbage bin lid was an inch ajar or if a single weed sprouted between your stepping stones. Her name echoed through the neighborhood in low tones, usually followed by a sigh. She was known for her complaints, written in neat cursive on HOA letterhead, slipped quietly into mailboxes like unwanted gifts. For weeks the neighborhood had basked in peace, the kind that comes with routine. But then one warm Saturday afternoon, that peace changed form. Smoke rose from a backyard grill, soft at first, then thicker as meat seared and fat dripped onto glowing coals. The scent was intoxicating, carried by a gentle summer breeze through the cul-de-sac. It wasn't the acrid kind of smoke that burned your eyes. It was rich and inviting, the kind that spoke of ribs and laughter and time spent well. But to Karen it was a declaration of war. The homeowner read it quietly, a frown turning slowly into disbelief and disbelief into amusement. The smoke hadn't been excessive. The music hadn't been loud. The gathering hadn't been unruly. Yet somehow, the simple act of grilling on his own property had become a crime in the eyes of one self-appointed neighborhood guardian. At first he brushed it off. Everyone knew her reputation. But then another letter came as another, each one more insistent than the last, each written with the same clipped precision. It wasn't just about the smoke anymore. Now it was about property values, air quality, and community standards. It became clear that this wasn't about barbecues at all. It was about control. Over the following week, whispers started to circulate. People on the block talked quietly during their evening walks, shaking their heads and rolling their eyes. Everyone had their own story: the time she complained about a child's sidewalk chalk drawings, or when she reported someone for planting flowers, not on the approved color palette. Still, the backyard stayed quiet. The grill was cleaned and covered. For a brief time, silence returned to the street, though it carried a strange tension beneath it, the kind that hums just before something changes. And then on the next Saturday, something did. It began as a simple decision, one made not out of anger, but out of quiet defiance. The homeowner decided he wouldn't let one person's bitterness dictate his joy. That morning, he wheeled his grill back out, stacked charcoal with practiced care, and let the flame catch with a steady whoosh. Soon the air filled once again with the familiar scent of smoke, sweet and savory, curling over the fence and drifting through the neighborhood like a memory reborn. But this time he didn't stop there. He sent a few texts, casual, friendly messages to neighbors who'd once complimented his cooking. BBQ tonight. Bring whatever you like. Everyone's welcome. By late afternoon, cars began parking along the street. Folding chairs appeared. Laughter rose above the fences, mingling with the scent of grilled food. Kids chased each other across lawns, while adults gathered with paper plates and smiles. The quiet street, once ruled by tension, came alive. From her window, Karen watched. Her curtain barely moved, but her eyes followed every guest, every plate, every flicker of flame from that grill she so despised. She picked up her phone. Somewhere across the street, the faint chime of a message notification rang, the HOA board's group chat lighting up. By sundown, the street glowed with porch lights and laughter. Smoke drifted lazily upward into the pink-gold evening sky, curling around the tidy rooftops that lined the block. What had started as one man's small act of resistance was slowly becoming something else, something larger, something alive. Benson surveyed the scene. He saw families, clean lawns, and a few parked cars lining the road. The smell of barbecue was thick, but not overwhelming. He glanced at his noise meter app and frowned. Everything was technically within limits. There was nothing here that broke any HOA rule. Karen's dramatic accusations seemed to crumble right in front of him. And that realization hit her hard. Her arms folded tightly as Benson gave her a short, bureaucratic nod before heading back to his car. She stood frozen, her face shifting from rage to disbelief. The crowd, realizing what had just happened, slowly began to cheer. Some clapped, others raised their drinks. The noise of celebration swelled again, louder than before. Karen retreated into her house, slamming the door so hard that even the wind chimes on her porch trembled. But her silence didn't stop the party. It fueled it. Someone turned up the music a little higher, and Mark began serving plates. Brisket, corn, ribs, and coleslaw filled every paper plate within minutes. It was no longer just a victory for Mark. It was a shared triumph for everyone who had ever been fined, scolded, or shamed by the HOA. As the evening deepened, string lights flickered on across the fences, and the entire street glowed. It felt like a summer block party straight out of an old movie. Neighbors laughing under the stars, kids playing tag with flashlights, the air still warm and smoky from the grill. But inside Karen's house, the light was cold and still. She sat at her dining table surrounded by HOA paperwork, typing furiously on her laptop. If the board wouldn't support her, she'd take it higher. To the city, to the fire department, to anyone who'd listen. In her mind, this wasn't over. Later that night, as the last of the laughter faded and the lights dimmed, Mark stood on his porch looking out over the peaceful cul-de-sac. The grill still glowed faintly, embers crackling in the quiet. He knew Karen would strike back. That much was inevitable, but for now he allowed himself a smile, because today, for the first time in years, the neighborhood had come alive again, and the smoke that had once symbolized conflict now symbolized unity. Tomorrow, however, was another story, because Karen wasn't the type to surrender. The next morning, the cul-de-sac seemed calm again, as though the wild, joyous BBQ from the night before had been nothing but a dream. The smoke was gone, the folding tables had been folded away, and the street was back to its perfect suburban stillness. But beneath that quiet surface, something was brewing, something that only Karen could have orchestrated. For her, the night had been a humiliation she could not let go of. Watching her authority crumble, seeing her complaints dismissed, and hearing laughter echo from the very lawns she used to control, it had been unbearable. As soon as the sun rose, she was already at her desk, typing an email so long it looked more like a legal brief than a complaint. She sent it to the HOA board, to city code enforcement, to the fire department, and even to a local news tip line. Her subject line read, "Urgent community health and safety violations." In her message, she painted the BBQ as an unauthorized public event, claiming it posed a fire hazard, excessive smoke levels, and unsafe crowding. She attached photos she had taken the previous day, zoomed-in shots of cars parked near hydrants, kids running near open grills, and even someone holding a lighter to ignite coals. Her goal was clear: to portray Mark as reckless, irresponsible, and dangerous. Meanwhile, life continued as usual for everyone else. Mark spent his Sunday cleaning up, unaware that a storm was quietly forming behind the scenes. Neighbors dropped by to thank him again, leaving behind plates and trays. The general mood of the neighborhood had shifted since the BBQ. People were friendlier, warmer. Even those who used to avoid eye contact at the mailbox now stopped to chat. For the first time, it felt like a real community, one that wasn't afraid to live. But late that evening, a letter appeared on Mark's doorstep. It was sealed with the HOA's official logo. Inside was a notice informing him that a hearing had been scheduled to review multiple alleged violations stemming from his event. It warned that potential fines could reach up to several $100s for disturbance, improper waste disposal, and unauthorized public assembly. Mark read it slowly, exhaling in disbelief. It was exactly what he had expected, but still, the pettiness of it all amazed him. Karen was behind this, that much was obvious. The hearing dragged on for nearly an hour. Karen presented her evidence with dramatic flair, showing photos, quoting bylaws out of context, and accusing Mark of setting a dangerous precedent. But for every claim she made, Mark calmly provided proof of compliance: permits, measurements, clean-up photos, even noise-level logs. Eventually, Benson, looking exhausted, announced that the board had found no valid violations. There would be no fines, no warnings. The event was lawful. The meeting was over. For Karen, it was the ultimate defeat. Her face tightened, her jaw locked, and her papers trembled in her hands. Without another word, she gathered her things and stormed out. Outside, the crowd erupted. The neighbors who had gathered began clapping and cheering. Someone shouted Mark's name, and laughter filled the air once again. The board members slipped out quietly, clearly realizing that the balance of power in the neighborhood had shifted. The people had spoken, not through votes or meetings, but through unity. Over the next few weeks, things changed. Slowly, the community began transforming in subtle but powerful ways. The HOA started easing its strict policies. Petty fines stopped appearing in mailboxes. The board became more transparent. Neighbors started organizing their own gatherings: movie nights on driveways, garage sales, small cookouts. Karen, however, grew more isolated. Her blinds stayed shut, her lawn uncut, and her car rarely moved. She sent fewer emails, filed fewer complaints. The sound of laughter and the smell of barbecue had finally broken something inside her, not out of cruelty, but out of the realization that the world around her had changed and she hadn't changed with it. Then, one summer evening, something unexpected happened. Mark was setting up another small barbecue with a few friends when he noticed Karen standing at the edge of her driveway. She looked different, not angry, just tired. The smell of grilled food floated toward her again, but this time she didn't flinch. She hesitated, then gave the smallest nod before returning to her porch. That moment was enough.